In this video, I'm going to share a bunch of what I would call power tips to do with Neovim. The things that I've learned how to do, some of them very straightforward, some of them maybe not so straightforward. But hopefully, if you make it through to the end, there'll be something in here that you didn't know before that you can take away from it. Okay, no more messing around, let's get started. So in Neovim, by default, if you've got line wrapping turned on, you can see there by the line numbers over on the left hand side. When you go up and down on the arrows or with J and K, you'll skip over those whole lines. But if you want to come down to one of the next visual line, the easiest way to do that is to just press G first. So you could do G and your down arrow, G and your down arrow, or if you prefer the J and K shortcuts, you can do G and J or G and K. Another thing that caught me out with Vim is if you've got a selection like this, and let's suppose I copy that, and what I want to do is copy that first 14, 15, and I want to paste it over a bunch of these things up here. Well, watch what happens here. If I do visual around the word there and I paste it once, I get the right thing. However, if I then go up to the next one, I do visual around word and I paste again and I get the haydock. Well, what's actually happened here is once I do the first paste ordinarily, the thing that I've overwritten effectively gets deleted and put into that register. The trick that there is on the most recent versions of Vim and Neovim is once you make your initial selection, so I'm going to yank that there, all that you need to do is you can highlight where you want to paste it, capital P, and that will paste it in. And then if you go to the next one, highlight that, capital P again, you can see that you can go on and on overwriting it then with the thing that you actually want to overwrite it with. We have this selection of text here. What I want to do is I want to paste that under there. Now typically you would do P and you go, what's happened there? Instead of pasting that text, because it was not a complete line, it was part of a line, it's kind of pasting that in line with the other text. If I do want to paste that on a new line, the shortcut that you want to be using is if you use the command line part, if you use P and U for put under, you enter that, it will actually put that text underneath. If you want the inverse, you want to put that text on the line above, it's the same but with a bang on the end, and that'll stick it above. I've got a JavaScript file here from one of my video courses. The only thing that's important here is there's a bunch of console.logs throughout this file. If you have something like this repeatable, like console.logs in your files, you can easily get rid of all of them with the G command. So again, if you use the command, you can use G, type in console, and then all you need to do is do a / and then D for delete. And that's going to go through this buffer and delete anything that's got console on that line. So you can see there, press enter, and now if I search for console and actually type it right, you can see that it's not found anywhere. I find that one so useful that I've actually mapped it as well. So you can see here in my which key, if I do extras here, you can see there C is remove console log, which is basically just a mapping of that. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to diff files. For this first one, I'm going to use the plugin called Git Signs, which if you don't have Git Signs, it's a really good plugin, and if you do anything with Git. I'm going to go to the command line, I'm going to use Git Signs, and then I'm going to do space, and then I'm going to do diff this, and then what you pass to it in the next bit is you give it the tilde and then number, and the number is how many versions of that file back you want to look at. So in this case, I'm going to pass it just one to look at the most previous version. And then you can see there, I've got Delta installed as well, which is this sort of paging thing which gives you the green and red that you can see there, but it'll still show you the diff, it just perhaps wouldn't be highlighted like that. And you can go up and down this file. The bits where there's the sort of yellow is changes on that line, and obviously the red and the green is for additions and subtractions. And then when you're done with that, you can just do buffer delete to close those down. The other thing that I find really useful, I'm going to bring up which key, I'm going to go to G, which is what I've got all my Git stuff under, and I'm going to do B there, which is to toggle the line blame. And what's good about this is you can see there just about probably make out there in faint text. What it'll do is it will tell you who was the last person to have touched that line, which is obviously great for team relations if you're working on a team. I don't have that on all the time, but it is useful to just toggle on and off. The other thing that you can do is using Telescope. Telescope has actually got a command which lets you do browse the file commits. So again, I've used which key here just so you can see what's going on, and I've got browse file commits set there. And what that does is it brings you them up in a Telescope previewer, and you can view them that way as well. So you can look through the commits, and so you can skip up and down the files in the usual Telescope way. I'm using Control D to go down, Control U to go up, and that can be handy as well. You can also, if you press Enter on those, it will actually check that version of the file out for you. Often there's times, particularly in CSS, that I want to get the name of an asset, well, usually an image, and I want to stick it into the code. And using the file browser extension for Telescope, you can browse for a particular asset, and then let's suppose it was this one I wanted to stick in. I've added a little bit to the Telescope config, which I'll show you the functions in a minute, but what that lets me do is I can either add just the name by itself, or I could also do, if I browse to that again, I can do the name, the file name, and the full path as well. Let me show you what that looks like. So basically it's these two functions here, and I'll stick a link to those in the description below. The pound sign and the percentage symbol have some sort of special meaning when it comes to Vim. Percentage sign means your current file, and the hash symbol or pound symbol means your alternate file. And they're the two files that you flick between if you use Control and 6 on any of your open buffers. And the registers of Vim automatically save the names of these two files for you. And you can prove that point by, if you go down to the command line, you can press :reg, and you'll be able to see there, look down the bottom here, I've got quotes, percentage is my current one, and quotes, pound, hash sign is my alternate file. So knowing that, if inside Vim we could paste that straight in somewhere by doing like %% p, and that will put in that particular file. However, that's not particularly useful in and of itself, because usually what you want to do is you want to take that file name and you want to paste it into something outside. But what we can do is we can make the system clipboard be equal to one of those file names. I can never remember the syntax of this, so what I've done is just made a little snippet for it, but you can see this if I use my which key here. I'm going to go to my extras, and there you can see it on N. I've got copy, buffer name and path, so I press N there, and that's copied that with this command here, which is essentially just saying let the system clipboard, which is the plus, be equal to percentage, which is my current file. This next thing is far simpler to do in normal text editors. I'm going to show you how to do it in Sublime Text first, and then we'll look how we do it in Neovim. What I'm trying to do here is copy everything on each line. I'm trying to copy what's inside the curly braces. Now you can't do a block visual selection in Neovim because they're non-uniform string lengths, so we need to be a bit smarter about that. In something like Sublime, it is super duper easy. You basically just I'm doing on the Mac here, I'm doing Control and Shift, and I'm going to move down here to the bottom of that file. I can then Alt and move all those tabs across, Shift and Alt and right arrow to select what I want, and then I'm just copying that, and I've got them. Not so easy in Neovim. So here's the same thing in Neovim, and what we need to do here is I'll sort of do it and then hopefully talk you through it as we go. So I'm selecting everything, and then what I'm doing, the command that I'm running here is I'm running norm for normal mode, and then what I'm doing is inside the capital A register, and the difference between the capital A and the little a is the capital A, you're still putting it into the A register, but the capital A means append it in, each one. And because this is going to work line by line, if I didn't have the capital A, then I would just end up with the last one that it copied in, because it would be replacing each time. But the capital A appends each one in. So I'm saying append in, and I'm doing yank inside curly braces. So if you watch now, you'll see the highlighting as it goes down each line. And then if I move to another file now, to paste this in somewhere else, I can do register. So I'm pressing the double quotes. That's showing me the registers here with, I think it's which key that's showing me these. You see down there on that list, the A, which has got what looks like what I need in it. So I'm pressing A to choose that register, and then P to paste that in. There's a possibility if you tried that last one, that what you'd end up in the A register is instead of each of the strings on their own separate line, you might end up with them all one after the other. Now, there's an option that you can set in Neovim and Vim that will let you make sure that when those things get added to the register, they go on a new line, and that's called the CP option. It's worth just showing you this because there's also there's a way of how you append to options in Lua in Neovim that I think is worth looking at. So CP options is the thing I'm interested in here. So you can see what I've got here is there is an existing sort of string, or there's an existing thing set for CP options. So I can't just do CP options is equal to this thing because it would knock out all the other things that you want to keep there. So to append to that, you can do :append and then basically just put in the string that you want to append to that option. And that is actually equivalent to that sort of thing as well, which is another way you could do it, so it's equal to that plus something else as well. You can start Neovim in a kind of safe mode. If you're having trouble with your plugins, it's good to know that you can start Neovim up bypassing those by using a different startup file. People typically call these minimal config files, which you can find a bunch of these around the net, but they basically sort of let you start Neovim up with a minimal set of config. You can see here that the command that you use is the -u. That's the key thing that says to Neovim that you want to use a different file for your config. So here's the example one that I've got. It's minimal_init.lua, and then when I open that up, I'm getting like a very bare bones version of Neovim, which could be useful for troubleshooting. Like a lot of people who code, I often like to have 2 or more buffers split either horizontally or vertically. For me, I like them in vertical splits. And in Neovim, you can either click to move to a different buffer if you've got the mouse enabled, but I find it quicker to do it with the keyboard. The key shortcuts for moving around windows in Neovim is Control-W for window, and then the shortcut that you want to do. So in this case, I'm on the rightmost pane here. If I want to go to the first pane, I can do Control-W and then Control-R. And Control-R is like is rotate, if you like. So that probably makes more sense if they were in a quadrant like that. And each time you press Control-W, Control-R, you're moving around. But obviously it cycles around these splits. That works, but it makes far more sense to have some decent shortcuts if this is something that you deal with all the time. Now, I go into a lot more detail about how I've set this up in this previous video. So if this is of interest, perhaps go and have a look there for more detail. But you can see down here how I've got the bottom of these inactive panes. I've got the window number, and what that means is if I'm on this leftmost one and I want to get to the rightmost one, which is number 3, I can just do leader 3 and get straight to it. And if I want to get back to 1, it's leader 1. You get the idea. Now, the other thing that's worth setting, I think, as an option if you use splits a lot, is what I like to do is if I'm closing one of those splits down, so I'm going from 3 to 2, I want the remaining splits to take an equal amount of space. And there's an option here which is equal always, and if you set that to true, what it means is by default this isn't set. So by default, if I was to close one of these buffers, one of the remaining buffers would get far more space than the other one, so it'd be an unequal distribution. What this does is it means that if I shut this buffer down, this one in the middle, you can see that both the remaining splits get the equal space. Here I want to show you a couple of quick ways of stripping lines out of a buffer. Here's a simple HTML file, and what I want to do is I want to get rid of all the lines that have got span in them. Now, probably the most straightforward way of doing that is to run the G command, and then I'm going to search for span, and you see it's found those, and then I can just do / and D, and that would do it. But what you can also do in Vim and Neovim, which is pretty cool, is that you can go straight out to an external CLI program. And the way that we do that is if I select everything and then I go into the command line and I do a bang there, that lets me run a shell command. So in this case, I'm going to do RG for ripgrep, and I am going to do let's see. So I want to invert my match, and then what I'm going to look for is span. Again, what this should do is call out to ripgrep, find the spans and remove them for me. So there you go. Same result, but just achieved a different way. But I think it's worth knowing that you can do that to call out to many of these sort of very powerful Linux commands that are probably on your system. Somewhat related to the last tip, one of the things I find myself doing a lot is I'm writing a document of some sort in Markdown and I want to export it out through something like Pandoc so I can convert it into a different format. It doesn't have to be that exact conversion process, but again, leveraging a different CLI tool to get something out of Neovim converted and then back into either a buffer or into your system clipboard so you can do something else with it is very useful. I've actually ran this command shortly before because it isn't the sort of thing I ever remember, and I'll show you why in a minute. So let me talk you through this again. If you look down the bottom left here, you can see that what I'm doing is I'm doing the %sign W to say write. The bang again is to call a CLI tool. In this case it's Pandoc, which converts documents from one sort to many other different sorts. And then I've got a couple of flags that I'm passing in. I mean, it doesn't really matter what they are. You can pass those to the tool that you're using, and then the pipe takes it from that and sends it somewhere else. So in this case, I'm taking the converted file from Pandoc and I'm piping it through to pbcopy, which on Mac OS is the system clipboard ostensibly. And then once you've run that, you can see that you can probably just about see if let me move this in here. You can see there that it's done the conversion to HTML for me there. Now, if that's something you find yourself using the same conversion over and over again, like a lot of these things, it's worth making a mapping for that. So you can see here in mine, if I select everything and then I use the X and I go to P for Pandoc export, that basically does exactly the same thing. I just have it behind a mapping because it's something I use fairly frequently. This little challenge is another of these that I think is a lot simpler to do in a modern text editor like Sublime Text, but you can definitely achieve it in Vim. You just have to think about it in a slightly different way. What I'm trying to do here is get everything deleted after the comma. I want to keep the comma and I want to get rid of everything after that. The trick is obviously we can't do block selection because they're unequal lengths and we've got unequal stuff after the comma on each line. So you might think about doing something like selecting everything and then doing norm to put us into normal mode, and then forward to the comma, and then D to delete. But watch what happens there. That takes the comma with it, which isn't exactly what I wanted. You can do what we want by saying, so we're going to select everything, we're going to search, and we're going to look for, so we're going to find literal commas, and then what we're going to do, this is the sort of the tricky bit if you like, is we're going to replace that, everything after that, which is the dot star, the asterisk, and we're going to do / comma, and what that'll do is it'll get rid of everything after that but then replace it with a comma. So it finds the first comma, deletes everything after it, and then instead puts a comma there. That gets us what we want. We could also achieve the same thing by using normal mode, and what we do there is we do space to get us into normal mode, and then we're going to go forward to the comma, and then we're going to go big C to change everything after that, and then a comma again. So it's going to go in normal mode, go down each line. It's going to go forward to the first comma, big C to put us into insert mode effectively. That gets rid of everything, the capital C gets rid of everything after that comma, and then we're changing it to be just a comma. So again, same result. Okay, this tip is explaining how you would get from something that we've got on the left to something like we've got on the right. So you've got basically a multiple of edit points that you want to perform a similar change to. I'm just doing it with 6 here, but you can imagine, sometimes you get a file like this and there's 20, 40, 60, whatever. So it's thinking about how we would tackle that. Now, when I first started using Neovim, I hated doing this sort of an edit because I was used to something like Sublime or VS Code, where in this instance you would just, with the mouse or however you wanted to, you'd add a bunch of cursors and just make the change that you wanted to then, which was quite intuitive. You need to approach it a different way with Neovim. With Neovim, what you do is you record a macro, make one change to one of the instances that you'd want to change, then you find all the other places that you want to make the change and apply that macro to them. That probably sounds a little bit convoluted, but now I'm used to doing this, I don't really think there's an awful lot in it. And the more instances that you have to change, the more the Vim way of doing things is actually more powerful, I think. So let's have a pop at this. I'm going to QA to start recording my macro. Big O, dot inside, space ampersand. Do not want that extra brace there. I'm going to leave insert mode, down 1, little o to get a new line below, close my brace, exit insert mode, and press Q again to finish recording my macro. So that, even though the format is not quite right, that is the edit that I want to achieve on all those other lines too. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go capital V to go line wise, capital G to go down to the end of the file. And then I'm going to enter command line mode, and I'm going to do global. I'm going to search for background, and obviously this just needs to match whatever your unique identifier is. Then /, and I'm going to do norm bang space at A, and what that's going to do, I hope, is within my selection I'm searching for background, and then what I'm going to do when I've found it is I'm going to enter normal mode and apply the macro that I've got saved in the A register. So let's see. Okay, so that's done what I hoped and expected it would do. And now if I actually just save the file, you can see that, let me just get rid of that highlighting. You can see that we've got the same things left and right. So again, it's a little bit weird at first to get used to, but the way to approach it in Neovim is to make your edit in one place, record that edit, and then apply it in the other places that you want to apply it. Another pretty cool thing that you could do that I didn't realise you could do for quite some time is you could make a key mapping but run a number of different things. So in this instance, you can see here in the left pane here, I've got a key map set, and by using a function as the argument, you can actually have a function that includes a bunch of other functions. So the km.set is actually just, I'll just take you up to the top so you can see, that's just a local to sort of get me to vim.keymap. So if I jump back down there, I was just using Control and O to go back to my jump point, previous jump point. After you've said you know that you want to use normal mode, and the key there that I'm using is n, and then I'm using a function, and inside my Lua function, I'm first doing that command, which is just a normal vim command, which is what that's doing is it's going to the next search item, and then ZZ is centering that search item. So that lets me do, let me just show you, not that it really matters for this, but as I press N, it keeps the search result centered. But then what I also want to do, I mean, this is a bit convoluted because I don't actually need to do this, but it's just to show you, is I can then also run a completely different function at the same time. So in this case, I'm just doing a refresh of my Lua line. So it's not the sort of thing that you need to do all the time, but it's useful to know that you can do it if you need to. This next one's really simple, but for whatever reason it evaded me for a while, so I thought it was worth pointing out in case you're in the same boat. So I do quite a lot of writing in Markdown in Neovim, and one of the things I do a lot is deleting sentences, which if I'm at the beginning of the sentence, it's easy to do D and the right parentheses, bracket, I don't know what they call it in America, we just call them brackets. So D and the bracket, one way or the other, will delete the sentence. However, if you're in the middle of a sentence, so you can see here I'm on this, you can see that there, I'm on lose. If I do D in the right bracket there, I actually don't get rid of the whole sentence because I've got a bit of it before that I also wanted to get rid of. With Vim, the movement to get rid of the sentence when you're in the middle of a sentence is you can do DAS, which is delete around sentence. So in this case, I want to get rid of this line here. You do, however, lose the extra inner keys on each side you get with the Advantage 360 or the Moonlander. I want to get rid of that whole line, so I can just do DAS and it all goes in one. I hope some of that was useful. We've covered a lot of ground here, so we've gone for some very simple stuff and we've done some not so simple stuff. So if any of it was useful, please like the video. It does really help other people find the content. And if you want more of this kind of stuff or keyboard related reviews, that sort of stuff, please subscribe. You can also go to my website, benframe.com. There's video courses there, links to my books, and obviously a very long running blog there too. Well, that's it. I think that's enough of me trying to sell you stuff. I'll see you again sometime.